Welcome to episode 74 of A Master's Degree in Rolling Terribly. I'm your host, Eddie. Joining me this week, a man who joined 3 other eager men, being Mark, Phil, and myself, in an exercise in partaking in our usual weekly activities, but with a harder session in mind, as we feel the firmness of the challenges ahead of us and tackle the girth of an increase in stats while we carefully control the safety of our play so that we don't get completely pounded over and over again. Gaz, say hi, Gaz.
Yes. Are these still user submitted ones, or was this from your from the pen of Daddy?
I just bit of both. I got inspiration from just a website that I accidentally clicked on.
Very good, very good. Well, I want to say I actually just noticed I am loving your hoodie. I think that's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. For people on audio, they're like, "Oh no, what's that?" Just imagine a really cool hoodie. Yeah, it's really cool, and Daddy's wearing it. So,
perfect. I think everyone's got an exact picture of what that looks like.
Whatever they want to picture in their heads, they might have no idea what we look like. That happens, right? Like you listen to podcasts and you form a picture of what people look like in your head, and then you see them, and then they don't look anything like what you think that they look like.
I think someone mentioned that a while back in the Frosthaven Outpost where we put our first link to the video or something, or it might have been a different video we did where we actually, had video content, and someone was like, "Oh no, this is that bit where you actually, have heard someone for a bit and now you've seen what they look like," and it's kind of scary. Like, do I want to see this? Do I not want to see this? Is this going to ruin how I view these people?
Yeah,
is it worth 100%. It? I hope we have disappointed everyone.
Oh, 100% we would have. Like the fact that they're still listening to us, they should be disappointed in themselves.
Maybe they've just gone back to just listening.
Yeah, they went to YouTube and no. We're going to get back to just podcasting.
So we're going to jump straight into this particular episode, which is pretty jam-packed. What?
14 minutes of banter?
No. We can't afford it today. We can't afford it most weeks, to be honest, because I do find by the end of it, we are kind of like, okay, cool. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut that. I'm going to cut that as I'm writing through my show notes. So at least this time, we should be able to cover everything because it's pretty packed today. Get ready. On today's episode, we'll be discussing scenario 133. Bolt. What do you think bolt means? Bolt like run fast, or just like a nut and bolt, or?
Yeah, probably the running fast one.
Okay, that makes sense. Nut and bolt would make sense.
What the scenario was about.
What about a thunderbolt?
Yeah, it could be that, but it wasn't.
Well, because they probably would have written that word in there as well, right?
Yeah.
Unless they're trying to be clever, like I am with all of our titles.
I mean, Kickstarter, you want to keep costs down. Maybe like at the end of the day, the word thunder was just bumping prices up too much. So like, don't know. It's just cost that extra weight. Yeah, okay. that ink.
Ink on the internet?
Yeah. Well, it's printed, right? In scenario, the book, and then the other book. I'm sure it's like 3 or 4 times. So
a day will come where it will no longer be printed, and it'll all be like VR and stuff. I don't know.
One day.
We're going to be talking a little bit about trials again. I think this is going to be a theme that over the next at least couple of weeks, we're going to be covering trials as they start to be completed. Yep. And a lot of them have been proven to be quite interesting, and I think they warrant a good discussion and potentially, I don't know, a trial expansion. You may have to do the thing that you're doing with the challenge deck with the trial deck.
Yep.
We're going to be having a chat or a revisit about scenario difficulty, which is very exciting. And we've got another Gaz quiz. But this one came from a listener, or the idea came from a listener. I put it together. Which basically means if you want me to quiz Gaz over absolutely anything, just send it to me or send me an idea or just send me the whole thing that I can just read. I'm happy to do it. And Gaz seems to love it. He seems to be being wrong a lot.
Oh, well, I mean, I practice it all the time, so I may as well, put it out there on the internet, yeah?
Professional wrong person.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's rolling terribly and being wrong.
That's all right.
Although we can't say that too much because we'll get sued.
No.
We're not always
slightly
wrong. Everything, just mostly wrong.
What's going to happen if we ever, for some odd reason, end up on their podcast?
Then we can be more wrong?
Well, it's a wrong off.
Wrong off, yeah.
All right, off to scenario 133. Let's go. So, do you remember our road event?
Yep. Do you remember our road event?
Yeah, I remember we didn't do one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too.
Dunno. Trying to catch you out. So we did not have a road event because it was a forced link. And unlike in the past, towards the end of some of the force links that we came across, when we kind of did a little bit of a cheesy, let's just step out of the zone and step back into the zone, just to reset and tick over, calendar days for a certain Bannersphere who really needed to visit the temple.
So on a side note, is there a question without notice?
Mm-hmm.
Should there be some form of incentive for doing a force link?
I think the incentive is you don't have to do an outpost event or another road event.
Oh, is that an incentive? It's like see less of the game, right? Like skip some of the game?
Depends. If the event is one you've seen before, maybe it's not that bad.
That's true. So but should there be another incentive? Like you get something extra if you go in, like kind of, again, in a push your luck sense, you're not getting some kind of bonus or...
No, I would put it as maybe the force link part in there. A is for flavor because it's like you're going to the same location, or an adjacent location. But B, just to it's maybe a tension thing or a raising difficulty thing, or it's a negative thing. And I think there's not too many. There's just a couple peppered throughout the actual campaign, and it doesn't overstay, except for that time where you thought it might have because it just conveniently kept happening. But in general, I don't think it overstays its welcome. I think that they have a place. And maybe it's just seen as a negative thing because you don't get that luxury of looking at events and downtime and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, if you hate all of that, this is an advantage. So could it be any more subjective?
No, I guess it's not. Depending on your situation and how much you hate the game, they are positive or negative. Yeah,
that's right. So we'll start off with our previously on Frosthaven. So basically what actually happened was last week, it's about going into that place to get that cat idol thing from the random pedestal. And we managed to escape a collapsing in cave, and then Mulbren came out of the shadows and was like, hey, that's mine. And that led us into this scenario, which is why it was a force link. Mulbren was given a lot of attitude to the idol for some reason, or to us, or a mixture of both. And then he was all like, hey, don't give me cheek. And he started casting spells onto it or something. And it kind of was this weird back and forth between a dude. And it's kind of like when you watch someone wrestle a dummy or an inanimate object, which I've been guilty of doing when I was a child. It's awkward because we're all standing there going, okay, this is weird. I wonder what's going on. And he's like, no, you stupid cat idol, and spells. And then he gets flung back. And look, at the end, Mulbren doesn't make it. He loses to the idol. And then it's kind of like, I guess we'll continue now without the guy who sent us here with the weird idol into scenario 133, basically.
Which is funny because we were talking about this. We knew that we started the next scenario with the idol because we'd looked forward to the Force Link scenario, but we hadn't read the flavor, and we were kind of throwing out there like, this doesn't make sense. Why have we got it? And
we just gave it to Mulbren.
Made the comment maybe we should read the flavor text because it's probably going to explain it, and it did.
Yep.
So well done, designers of game. You thought of that.
That's right. Good work, Tom Heath. So scenario 133, sorry. Bolt, designed, written, Tom Heath. And yeah, the scenario is complete. Scenario goal. Scenario is complete when all characters have escaped. So it's a second escape for the chain. And at the end of that round, we will read a thing. Scenario effect, there isn't any. Monster combinations, we have Raining Drake and Spitting Drake. So that's one of the reasons we came here. Because
literally the only reason.
Pretty much, yeah. No, really, yeah. So the reason we picked here, we would have come here eventually. It's just we chose to come here early so that we could finish a certain thing to then assist in a different thing, and we needed some drakes. And we were hoping to capture at least one of those. We have polar bears and we have forest imps as well. Our first room setup, we have a T-shaped tile. We have a door on each side, 2 in the middle. And then on the actual board itself, we have 3 forest imps, 3 rending drakes, and 2 spitting drakes. I'm very excited to see the drakes again. And that was one of the, I know we were heading here knowing that they were here, but for something, I think drakes were in Gloomhaven. We haven't seen that many. We've seen a couple on scenario 33, and I think the 69, the one that
forest one.
Yes, the forest one. And
that was only rending drakes as well, though.
Yes,
rending drakes and
forest imps again.
I think. Yeah.
They seem to make a good partnership, apparently. Special rules. Now, to add on to the hardcore rules we had last week, if any character becomes exhausted, this scenario is lost, because that is ongoing. We can still not be exhausted.
Yeah.
But we still had the idle rules. But these times they were a positive, because I don't know if it's weakening or we're strongening. I'm going to go with strongening. +1 for whoever's holding the idol. Put a token on, and the token just doesn't do it justice. We used the miniature, the same miniature we had for Ormi, on the person's board, and apparently that's a good reminder that you have advantage. And
it's a terrible reminder.
We need something bigger. But yes, if you have the idol, you get +1 to your movement, and you get advantage, which is pretty good. And then you can
way better than -1 movement continuously stacking forever.
It depends. If your build is centered around moving less and having, wait, was that it? Move and do you have disadvantage on attacks? Oh, okay, yeah. If it's moving less.
maybe you got some kind of benefit. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And this idol can be palmed around. So just during your turn, you can palm it off to someone who's adjacent to you. Challenge cards. We started off with initiative. The initiative challenge card, which is like all players increase all their character initiative values by 10, which now that we're going through the deck a second time, we're being a little bit more selective. We're not in an absolute rush to nail through this unless someone gives us a really good incentive reason as to why we should be blowing through the challenge deck, because Glint surely isn't, unless the world is rewritten.
Yeah.
In some way.
I mean, it sounds like that's happening right now. Somehow the call has been put out there.
Yeah, but what's going to happen with that? Because I hear that multiple things are being written.
We're going to get like a loot pinata worth of rewards when we complete this thing. Because
we're just adding all the different stories together and all the rewards.
Yep. Glint's like, does this thing and then he does something else. And hey, why not have that?
Well, the thing about rewards, guys, is that the word reward is usually seen as a positive, but in Frosthaven, it could be either, right? So people can be like, your reward is everyone starts from level 1 or something stupid like that.
Yeah, you gain negative morale.
Correct. Gain negative, whatever. Our pets for the evening, we had Lunacy the Hound, which is the +1 to attacks targeting something adjacent to your ally. This is one we had last week and we have not used. So again, the pet amDirt rules are evolving and we are making sure that everyone gets used.
Yep.
And we had Wart the Lightning Eel, suffer 2 damage to recover a card, a level 1 or an X card from your discard. Our party's made up of Deddy, me on the level 7 Astral, Gaz, I don't know what level he is, I think 5. There we go. Shards. Mark on his level 7 or 8. Kelp. And Phil was on his Blink Blade for his second scenario. So it's a brand new Blink Blade. I believe it's around level 4. Yeah. Now we had this last time. Our decks were built for this scenario. Did you make any changes? Or did you feel you needed to make any changes?
I think so. I think I might have changed one card in around. I might have got rid of my attack loot card and then put something else in there. I'm not sure. But I did keep most of my bigger movement cards.
I'm pretty sure I kept the exact same thing just because last scenario was an escape scenario. So this one, escape. If it worked last time, it'll work this time, right?
That's it.
There is a section link. When door 1 is open, read a thing. When door 2 is open, read a thing. And when all characters are occupying pressure plates, which is always vague because, that's all it says. We don't know how many. We assume it's 1. Read a thing. The other thing, Gaz, what did we do differently in this run than we have done in every other run we've ever done?
Raise the difficulty.
That is right. How much did we raise the difficulty?
2.
We raised it by
1 last week, right?
That's true. Did we?
But I think so.
I can't remember. I have to listen to last week's episode.
But yes, we raised it by 2.
Yeah, what was the thought process behind that?
It makes it harder.
Yes, okay.
We have been, look, we've been saying this for a while. Some of the scenarios have been a bit of on the easy side, some really cool designed ones. We feel like we just get going and then it's kind of done, or we run out of monsters, or just there isn't a massive challenge. It's like maybe a couple of small spikes of challenge. But so no one had suggested this, which is a shame on the community, especially Dwarf. I thought he'd be all over this one, right? That we thought maybe we'll try out a higher difficulty. So we bumped it up too, mostly because that's seemed to be where it started raising more than just the hit points.
Yeah, and there's also the Bling Blade factor as well. And we've got these two S tier DPS classes in the group. We've got me, who's playing a bit more of a tanky utility, and you playing a bit more of a controlling support. It feels like we've got the tools needed to maybe handle a tougher challenge. And the other thing is, a lot of our previous sessions, actual in-person sessions, we're actually finishing a lot earlier than we have in the past, almost to the point where we're like, do we squeeze in a second scenario?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if we play this at a +2, we can at least see what it's like, and then we will most likely know fairly early if we can or cannot do this, and then we can run it back and lower it if we need to.
Yep.
Before we jump into the scenario, I would like to have a little touch, wrong word. I'd like to touch, no, I can't use the word touch with this. I'd like to have a little spotlight on, a monster spotlight on the Drakes. Considering we've barely seen them, I know that they're a OG monster from Gloomhaven, and now they're, in Frosthaven. There are probably heaps of them that we've just somehow avoided, and that we're probably going to run into about 5 or 6 scenarios in a row with just nothing but Drakes, to the point where we're absolutely sick of them. We're going to cover both of them in this little discussion, because we've got Rending Drake and we have the Spitting Drake. Just quickly, off the top of your head, which one do you think is, well, for you personally, more dangerous?
I think the Rending Drakes. So in my head, before this scenario, in my head, Rending Drakes hit hard multiple times and go fairly quick. Spitting Drakes do range attacks and have a stun, like a non-conditional stun, like just a card that says, hey, just stun something.
Yes.
So that, from my knowledge of them, that's usually the danger point, and the stun thing seems to be easy enough to get around, whereas I know the Rending Drakes have cards that do like 2 or even 3 attacks, which can be quite brutal.
They both have innates on all their attacks, and Rending Drakes are the wound, and Spitting Drakes are muddle. Was it a lost opportunity to give them poison, or is that just gross?
The Spitting Drakes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that would be gross.
Instead of muddle.
Well, yeah, or instead of muddle. But I think that Black Imps have poison innate, right? So they're probably trying to make them a bit different.
Yeah, but Chaos Demons have innate muddle.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just that might be the reason they didn't give them poison.
So Rending Drakes, like you said, they go very quickly. They've got a disgustingly early range of initiatives, 3 being 6, 12, and 13, which obviously can be problematic. And in our particular scenario that we're doing this time, we have to add +10 to, ours, which means these guys are going to go early like a lot. Like that's what, 3 out of 8?
Yeah.
They're level 6, which is the earliest. A lot of the times when they're that low, they're either doing something crazy or they are doing something defensive, and that's exactly what they do with their 6. They add their 2 shield, because they don't have an innate shield. They don't have an innate retaliate or anything like that. The only thing you're worried about when you're going up and hitting these things is the fact that they're going to have a turn and hit you back potentially multiple times. And if there's groups of them, that's disgusting. But yeah, they don't have the defensive things in place to prevent a burst down. But when that 6 comes out, it's kind of crap, because it's the only card they have that doesn't do anything. It gives them strengthen, it gives them shield, and it just means, and it's not a reset card, which means whatever follows this is going to have strengthen, which is something to think about, and a little bit on the gross side. They've got 2 cards that multi-attack the same target. So they've only got 2 that do it, but obviously they're pretty gross, especially the one that hits 3 times. And they've got 2 that will target 2 people instead of the same person. And one of them is a ranged one in poison, which is something we didn't know until it happened, when it was like, oh, wow, these guys are actually ranging us right now. And if there's a few on there, kind of sucks. 13. All right, the number 13 is their initiative for one of their cards, which is a reset card. And that's one of the multi-attack cards. It's an attack, it's a move, it's an attack. If they spam that, like we're always talking, at least all the way back to like Derelict Elevator and the Wave Throwers, where with enemies that have a reset card that they can spam. What's gross about this is this one goes at a 13.
Yeah.
Like, sure. Like, these things are pretty gross the more and more that I look into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the thing, right? But they don't have shields and no retaliate, right? So you can kind of lay into them. They got decent HP, but that's going early and hitting really hard. It's just this kind of constant. You can't be near them, right? Because as you said, if they go at 13 and they attack, say nothing because nothing's next to them, and then they move next to you and then they hit you pretty hard because they were hitting us for like 5s and 6s.
At +2, which is level 5 monsters, they hit at a 5 and a 6. And at +0, which is where we normally would be clearing stuff, it's a 4 and a 6.
Yeah.
So it's not.
So they're still hitting pretty hard. And then they, as you said, it's a reset card. They also have a 12. So there's a 2 in 8 chance, right? When they have their next turn, they're already next to you that they're going at a 12 or a 13. Now, I know people can go quickly, but like most classes are going to struggle to consistently go below 13.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to, it's like an active, like I'm going quick this turn because I want to do something. So it almost puts you in that position where if you don't have your really quick card or some other weird initiative shenanigans, you're probably going to get munched, right? That combo kind of for an elite is almost a move, attack 6, attack 6, attack 6.
Yeah. And then
before you get a turn.
They're not even kiteable due to that movement because they're 4 movement for normal and 6 for elite, right? At least +2, it's 6. You can't get away from them. So they're going to catch up with you and it's one of the, you got to out DPS them from what I can see, or definitely UCC. Yeah. Yep. So gross. These guys are actually pretty horrendous when they're actually teamed up with support. And that's something, this is now the second time we've experienced it because the first time was with the Forest Imps. This is again with the Forest Imps. And the Forest Imps, I mean, the Forest Imps have poison attacks, which obviously make their multi-attacks hurt more, which is kind of crap. The imps will strengthen and obviously muddle us, which is bad. And of course, healing, right? The imps can actually heal. Good thing that I have any elemental affinity to worry about or play around. Yeah, overall, a very key mob that has made the trek over from Gloomhaven to Frosthaven and still pits a bit of fear in, I would dare say, a lot of players' hearts, you know?
Yeah, if we had encountered these more, I feel like when we rated them, we would have rated them a lot higher.
Well, I forgot to write down where they were rated. Do you remember? Oh, I've got them here now, actually.
I don't like, my guess would be that we rated them in the middle, which is what, like?
Which would have been not bad.
Not bad. Yeah, I feel like we probably put them in there because we didn't really encounter them. And then when we did, we were able to deal with them fairly easily. Like I remember Phil got booked by the room where they were in, but that particular scenario we fought them in, there wasn't really, they weren't alive for that long because we kind of all came in there the next turn, just killed them all. Right. Yeah. But I feel like if we were fighting these on a more regular basis, then we would have more experiences like we did on Monday and this week. And we probably would put them up at least into oof. Like,
well, we rated them in the 4th tier. Ooh. So in the meh tier. So they started off in meh and they finished in meh. And like we're probably going to do one more of those videos, just to do a final overall kind of thing. But yeah, we didn't really rate them, but I can tell you right now, they would move up. I don't know how far, but they would move up from there.
Yeah, definitely.
So new appreciation. With the actual spitting drakes, their counterpart, which we also, we put them as higher initially. Then we did the raining drakes. And then in our second tier list, we dropped them into the same bucket as raining drakes, actually right next to each other in the meh bucket. So we didn't really worry about those too much. They basically have the same level 6 card as the raining drake with the shield and strengthen. They have 250 initiatives, and then they have 3 in the late 80s. So they're definitely slower and much easier to play around. But if they are allowed to hit you, I mean, they also hit fairly hard, 4 or a 6 on a ranged attack, which is fairly gross. And they do have poison attacks. All their attacks are ranged. And of course, like you said earlier, they have an unconditional stun. And that is an 89.
Yeah.
Which the only other one I can think of that does that, I think, is Steel Automaton, but they'd have to be adjacent to you because they don't move when they do it.
Yeah, I think so. I was really surprised with how hard these things hit. So in my head, the stun and some of the AoE was the main kind of that was the thing that was going to get you, right? When there's 3 or 4 of them, they're all going to range attack you, and 3 or 4 attacking, can add up. But seeing some of the cards they were drawing, like they were hitting for like 5, 6, 7 on some attacks, and like attack 7 at like range 3 or 4 with like 2 movement basically just meant that you couldn't hide from them, right? Like you're not getting away from something that's flying and has that range. And that was bonkers. So I was, that these just were absolutely doing so much more damage than I thought they would.
Yeah, they're little nukers. Because it's also annoying because they're flying, and I think that came up when I think Phil made some comment about, that's okay, I'll just pop them in the trap, and it's like, no, mate, they got wings. Like, it's not gonna happen. The other thing is also that I was really shocked by was their health. For most flying things, at least that we experience, these things have like at least that +2. They have 12 at normal and 19 at elite. Yeah. So they're hitting like trucks. They can stun you. They take a while to burst. You can't burst them the way. If there's 2 or 3 of them, because that's usually the case, you're in for a potentially bad time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I think in my head, right, and this is just kind of headcanon from Gloomhaven, because I didn't put these as a massive threat. I kind of had Rending Drakes were kind of, I don't know, they were kind of small dragons, but the Spitting Drakes were like whelps. I kind of, in my head, that's how it was. They were like small flying ones, but they're not. Like, they're just flying dragons. Like, they're flying drakes. Like, if you were to size-wise, they look like they should be the same size, not like imps, which I thought they were going to be like imps and hit like imps. But they didn't. They were, I think, like,
whelp is a great description, because even the image makes them look a little bit whelpy. I mean, it's probably our WoW background as well, where little tiny annoyances. Yeah. But no, they're absolute nukers. Any general strategy you can think of that you would put for not so much rending, but more the Spitting Drakes?
They're range things. You just got to jump onto them and kill them, like archers, or those. I mean, there's a couple of kind of range artillery type units. But yeah, you're right. Like you said, with 12 or 19 health, like at our level anyway, that was like a lot to chew through.
If you had one of each at elite right there, and the 4 of us are about to, deal with them, we can't CC them at all, who's the priority?
I still think the Rending Drakes are pumping out more damage unless you can kite them. Because they're probably going to, over a couple of turns, do a double attack, and they go really early. So I don't think the damage is avoiding that. Whereas at I think the worst the Spitting Drakes are doing is the AoE attack, which we're pretty good at, like, kind of lining up for.
Yes, not avoiding.
But we can probably, with something like that, avoid it. At least avoid 2 or 3 of us getting hit, right? So I'll probably still say the Rending Drakes, but it's a tough call.
Yeah, okay. Hypothetical. You guys, you're in a medium-sized room, and you're currently playing shards. Would you rather 1v2 2 Rending Drakes or 2 Spitting Drakes?
It's probably, again, the Spitting Drakes, because I feel like the Rending Drakes are going to get next to me and then just tear me up. Like,
okay. Now you're Coral.
Oh, well, now I want to be fighting the Rending Drakes, because they're just going to wreck themselves.
Now you're Prism.
I'd say the Spitting Drakes, because the Rending Drakes would just absolutely destroy. Like, they'd all be one-shotting most of the robot.
I can sort of see that.
Whereas at Spitting Drakes, again, there is a chance they stack up, but again, they don't, and they're not hitting multiple times.
Okay.
Lastly, and also the I can guarantee to go before almost all of the turns of the Spitting Drakes, whereas the Rending Drakes, Like I had some quick cards on the Prism, but like 12 and 13 is really low.
Yes, like insanely low. Banner Spear.
Probably the Rending Drakes because they're easier to get into formations. Or is it things that are ranged were always annoying because they'd move away? So getting allies next to a ranged thing and then them still being there was annoying because even if they had a turn, they'd move away and then you had to reposition like kind of the ally and you and the monster. Or is it at least Rending Drakes is just going to stand there? And as we know, the Banner Spear is the best tank in the game. Jokes, don't flame me, please. Dwarf, don't quit or kill me. If you don't understand, go to the subreddit. But yeah, I'd say that Banner Spear probably, again, the Rending Drakes I'd rather fight.
Nice. And lastly, the Drakes, are they well designed?
I think so. I think these are something that I didn't think much of. I always thought Rending Drakes were tough, and I just remember that from Gloomhaven. But I feel like now knowing their cards and also fighting them, they are a really good high DPS, medium tanky level of monster. Like they're cool because they're not hard to deal with, as in they don't have shields, they don't have retaliate. So it's really a DPS race. Like each of those is a DPS race, but they're going to be in your face and they are going to hit you hard.
Yeah.
And so you almost guarantee that. And so I kind of like that, because we don't have a lot of monsters that are just like, I'm going to move straight up to you and just going to keep pounding and just smash you, right?
Yeah. Like incredibly dangerous, very assassin-y pouncy, almost like Ursa from Dota when they're in your general space. Like these are the ultimate, you need to probably CC these. And if anything, that 6 card, like I said earlier, it goes really early and it can mess up your plans, but that's your window basically because you know the next thing that's going to come out is going to be an attack of some variety. That's your moment of disarming, something if you're going to, and giving yourself that opportunity to just create that tiny bit of space so that you can go back in and blow them up.
Yeah. The Spitting Drakes, I think they're fine. Like they aren't particularly interesting from a design perspective, but again, they're kind of like Algox Archers in that they are just going to constantly pump damage.
Yeah, I think it's also nice when they can take a unit and expand on it. So you've got the Drakes and you've got different varieties of it. I'm hoping at some stage there'll be a Polar Bear faction or something where, Polar Bear Priest, Polar Bear Wizard, just different variations of Polar Bear. And,
hopefully.
You never know which kind of combo you're going to get. And then later on, they make a playable Polar Bear who's defected from the Polar Bears that you can then bring into the game.
There we go. All right, Polbarian. The only thing is I would like them to be in more scenarios because I think it was cool for a variety of reasons, but they're an interesting monster to fight. And it would be cool to see more of them, even in small doses.
I agree. We need more. All right, scenario 133, bolts. So how are we going to approach this at a harder difficulty?
Oh, yeah.
No, go for it.
Just jump right in there and just like get smashed by everything, right?
It's easy, right? Just see what happens. Just push buttons and pull levers. That's what I say every time. The very beginning of this, now we probably need to talk a little bit about the end of last week, is that Phil, and we didn't mention this in the last recording, we will now. Phil mentioned towards the end of last week, he was like, done my trial, and he read exactly what it was. And we were like, oh, amazing, well done. And then he was like, okay, cool. I don't have the card with me, so I can't say it word for word. But I just know that in any given scenario, he can't say the words attack, damage, or take. And every time he does, he takes 2 damage.
2 damage.
Right? So he did that trial and in last week. And it was funny because for some reason, there was one moment I remember he specifically said the word attack. So when he explained what his trial was, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. But by the way, no, I heard you say attack during one thing when you were pointing at the screen of Xhaven during just one arbitrary round that happened in the game. And he was immediately like, oh no, I've got to, redo it kind of thing. And it's weird going into a scenario where you know what someone's trial is, but that should have it should be advantageous to go in there knowing that everyone's kind of reminding you of what you cannot or should not say. And, we're all encouraging this. So we kind of, at the very beginning, he's already replaced the word damage with the word rabbits, I believe. He went with rabbits. And like, even before the scenario started, he would have taken about 8 damage. And we had to say to him, as soon as like it's go time, all right, that's when the thing starts. Get all of your damage, attack, and takes out of the way now.
Yeah.
Because, and this ended up becoming probably the funniest thing in the game in a very, very long time. And I'm so glad that this trial went to Phil.
Yep.
Because it is amazing. I wish we could just record it. And the amount of times he says it, and then Mark just goes to Xhaven and goes, yep, take 2 damage. Yep, take 2 damage. Take 2. He goes, oh, but my health should be like this because I healed, with my heal pot. Okay, cool. We'll just bump it up again, and then we'll take 2 damage, and then take 2 damage. It was just, it had me in stitches, and it was a very, very enjoyable trial to watch.
It's a funny one because it's funny when it happens, and no fault to Phil because it's tricky, right?
Yes.
And I think it's one of those ones where you need to be switched on all the time, which it's tough in a game like that. We're playing for 3 hours, right? So but there were some very funny moments that came out because of it. And I think as well, because Phil is trying really hard, that he also gets really disappointed when it's pointed out because he's not really noticing that he's saying it, which is usually what's going to happen with a filler word or a particular word. And so when we point that out, it's almost like, ugh, like it's just this like sigh of like, oh, not again.
Yeah.
But it's because he said it, but he didn't realize he said it because he's trying not to. But yeah, so it's such a weird and interesting trial. And you're right, and it's the best that it's landed on Phil. Thanks, Phil. I'm sorry that you have to deal with this one, but it's definitely creating some entertainment for the table.
100%. So we started this particular scenario and we had all the drakes in the room, and it was kind of like, oh no, we didn't really have time to plan anything because they all have really large movement and they all came up to us. And our mate Phil, who's on his Blink Blade, got to open up again, and he did something he did similar to last week, except this time, Gaz, he planned to go invisible, which was pretty cool. So he was going to go real deep into the whole group of all the drakes and all that, and he went invisible. And then you mentioned that in the session, okay, cool, that's turn 1. What are you planning on doing next turn? And he was like, not too sure. And then the raining drakes, he came out of invis, and it was yum, 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 yum. Got nice and munched. I also took a bit of a beating in this particular room. I got Cassandra out. I didn't bring her last week, so I think I did bring her this week because I figured she would help with clearing. She got booked again because she gets hit by only crits and +2s, even though she's got 5 health and a shield. And we're just, Gaz and I are just sitting there waiting, praying, hoping for Blinkblade and Kelp to explode and do their thing. And it was a long wait, at least in this particular run, because this was looking incredibly resetty. Like, we were in the room for, 6-7 rounds or whatever, and we were struggling to actually clear safely. We were just taking damage left, right, and center. I'm almost certain Phil had to discard 2 cards fairly early or something along those lines. And of course, we remember the special rules. If anyone exhausts, the scenario is gone. We lose.
Yep. So the one special rule that's really important.
Super important.
I'm pretty sure that Phil had to discard a card in the first round.
Most probably.
Like
Was he starting up forward and the Drakes pulled one of their early cards, and that's why?
No, because I think the first turn he just moved forward and hit something, then he moved back and he was going to give us all movement, but then he was targeted, and so I think maybe the range Drakes, the speeding Drakes might have gone next, and they all just moved up slightly and just like shot him for like 6 at a time, and because he'd said attack and or damage a couple of times since the game started, which he was lower on health, and then he had to burn a card.
Yeah, so
it was off to a good start.
Yeah, but some of it was very self-inflicted, which is very amusing. Very.
Sorry, go.
No. I was gonna end that bit and talk about the second run.
Oh no, I was just gonna say one thing that did happen at the perfect timing was there was a listener or watcher or fan of the show or person that knows the show exists that popped into discard at precisely the right time, which was Mick Cooper, I believe, and said notification for Gaz trial, which is exactly what I asked for. I was remembering it, but that made me look back and remember it proper because I put it up in front of me instead of putting it down, and I was like remembering, but I kept forgetting it because that's what I do. And then I saw that thing and I was like, yes, okay, cool, it is. And it was basically we're about to pick, I think either pick our cards or it was very, very close to right at the start, which was perfect timing. So
Yeah.
I made sure that was front of mind.
Yeah, and I'm glad because I don't have to listen to another week of you forgetting it, which is awesome.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, M. Cooper.
Yeah, and I M Cooper, McOoper. Yes, it's probably M Cooper, right? McOoper.
It might be McCooper. Like I don't know.
McOoper.
McCooper.
But yes, and also Mark did a good job of just randomly through the scenario, be like, trial gas? I was just like, yes, thank you. So I was remembering it, but it was good to kind of get these slight bumps of like just remembering so that I didn't forget to do it.
Yes.
And we will talk about it later.
We will talk about it later. So we collectively decided to restart this scenario, and then conversation came up. Oh, just quickly on the previous one. One of the things that were probably booking us the most was the fact that all our cards had to go at +10.
Yes.
And against the Drakes, which we've already covered, is horrendous. And that's probably one of the main reasons why Phil got booked. And we just, that initiative card just did not work against these mobs.
Yep. I think I said it when we were choosing them. I'm like, that's the least bad one. And it's probably not going to be that big a deal because 10 isn't an issue. Yeah. And on the first turn, the Drakes went one initiative before me, including my +10. So I would have gone before them without that. Yeah. And my thing was going to be to muddle like 5, which would have been them. And then looking at the cards that came up, one of them was a crit, which is why Phil took so much damage, which he wouldn't have taken because they would have had muddle. So one turn it took for Mark's prediction to come true of like, you realize now we're going to get booked by this initiative kind of challenge. So yeah, it definitely made a difference.
Which is good in a way that a challenge card can be challenging.
Yep.
Like that. So we did decide to start again, and the conversation came down to, do we turn it down? All right, we tried +2. It was quite bad. Do we turn it down? And I think Mark may have suggested, or someone suggested, that we keep it at the difficulty it is because it felt doable despite feeling quite difficult, and get rid of the challenge card.
I think for me, the turning point, because we were umming and ahhing, was when you said, oh, well, if we're going to drop it down to 1, then I'll change my deck back to just like lol easy mode and just pump through it. I was like, wow, that's a challenge if ever I've heard one. Let's do 2.
Who said that? Me?
You. Yeah. 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 You were. Yeah. I think you were pretty adamant, but I think instead of just saying like, I think we should do +2, you were like, well, I'll just change my deck back to like, and I was like, yep, that's a fair call. Like we've done +1 and they've been easy. So let's go. But then you're right. Someone suggested dropping, I think it might've been Phil even, that suggested we drop the challenge. If we're going to do +2, which I think is a good call for what we were doing because we really struggled in that first room.
We did, but I think a lot of it, and we'll talk about the difficulty afterwards, you kind of get used to running on autopilot with a lot of your cards and a lot of the movements, and you just, in a regular game of Frosthaven, at least that I've experienced, your kelp just runs around and 2-shots everything. And then, you know, the Blinkblade was doing that before the kelp was even doing that. Now they're together on the same team. So it's kind of like, at least spice it up for them, and we'll throw the odd heal every now and then. So it felt doable, right? It felt, +2 did feel doable. It just was going to require less recklessness and more planning. A little bit more planning, a little bit more communication. So we set it up again, take away all we do is remove the challenge card, and we jump straight back into it. And already after the first round or 2, just watching what everyone was doing, more thought was going into the card selection. People were taking a little bit longer with choosing their cards, and we were more just careful with our communication and just making sure everyone understood what we were intending to do. It's making sure that the rounds themselves had more impact as opposed to, because the game, I've mentioned in the past, there's a tempo thing, and if you fall behind in the tempo game, it's really hard to catch back up. Making sure that the tempo stays good and that you're not having dead turns, you're still achieving something. And we definitely did that. Like it was evident after the first 2 rounds. But also what I noticed was the tension went up. Every single round felt like really tense as we're revealing what the enemies are doing, working out if our initiative is working out, and we're getting the plan that we had set in place. And it was a completely different feeling, which was cool.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think if we compare the very first turn of that scenario in our first run to what you're speaking about, which turned into most turns through our second run, is that the first one was like, oh yeah, pick your cards, do a thing. Phil was going to move around and give us all movement. We were all going to go forward and do things. I was going to muddle things, whatever. And then he got exploded, and then the Drakes moved forward and attacked us, and everything really bad happened. It was almost like a holy crap, when did that happen? We were just gonna like stroll in, and compared to, as you said, every turn we were communicating more about the threats. I think is a little bit about what we're doing, but it was more about like identifying threats on the board and people talking about how they could or couldn't deal with that, right? And that kind of came into a potential CC or killing things if we could or whatever, just so that you knew where you should or shouldn't, because they were hitting hard. So you're like, I don't want to get hit by that. And somebody like, don't worry, I've got it. You go, cool. But you're right, because the tension always came up of what they're going to draw, because you can't deal with all threats. I think that's one of the things that I know that they've changed from Gloomhaven, and was one of the issues with some of the classes on their kind of supporting abilities was that you could neutralize most of what was on the board a lot of the time. I feel like in Frosthaven so far anyway, and I mean, this is when it's been difficult, it's because you can't do that. And it definitely felt in this scenario like we could probably manage a couple, but we were going to get hit by some stuff.
Yeah.
So there were most turns where it was like, okay, well, hopefully they don't draw something really bad, because that's going to make us not dealing with them even worse.
Yeah. We did more CC in this for that reason. Like you said, we the tension comes, the card goes up, we see what everyone's doing, and then it's risk management and it's a priority system. This thing's shielding, ignore it. We're not going to deal with this right now. But that thing over there, like if one person takes 2 hits from a Rending Drake, let's say it's Phil, for example, who's level 4 and he's, 14 health or something like that. And he's 2 hits is nearly going to kill him, right?
Yep.
Especially if they pull really well, like they draw really, really well. And then all of a sudden, the whole group's mentality or the whole group's change, the priority is, crap, get Phil out of here. Heal him, keep him up, protect him. And that's what sets you on the back foot a little bit, is that you've instead of assessing the whole board and the whole situation and trying to work out what everyone's role is and performing it, all of a sudden it changes to panic mode of, crap, this person's dying, quick. Focus card choices and all of that on keeping that person's up, and then you start to fall a little bit behind. And because that was what happened in the first run, we thought about that in the second run, which meant that our health was relatively high despite there being the exact same amount of mobs and the RNG still pulling the same amount of cards. It's not like they shielded themselves 3 rounds in a row and didn't do anything. They were still doing everything. But I mean, Mark on Kelp has a lot of CC. You've got some CC. I've got CC. And the next minute, we're calling out disarm targets. We're calling out, Mark's got a stun. And the CC was just, it felt really good. It felt really rewarding when you see all of the mobs and what they're about to do, and you're about to take 7 different hits that's being spread around the party. And all of a sudden, by the time it's their turn, we're taking 2. Right? And the 2 hits that are coming are on a target that has a bunch of shield and a ward and things like that. And I think that was a great growth exercise for what could be.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was, I think as you mentioned at the start, we had to play it differently, right? Because we were a bit in autopilot, and I think that first run kicked us out of that. Just as a side note for anybody who might be new to the term, CC is crowd control, just in case that's that's your stuns, your disarms, your mobilizers, all that stuff.
Thought it was credit card. I thought we just went, you know what, Isaac, where's the DLC? We paid for it. He was like, here's your new buffs. Here's your new, skin that gives you +5 to all stats. And away we went.
Yep.
So we actually cleared the first room, bar 2 imps that we just thought Gaz and Phil can deal with, which is they're forest imps. What are they going to do? Are they going to do a little 4 damage nuke? And maybe
can I talk about my trial now?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So the trial that I had, which I forgot twice, was something I'll paraphrase here. All of your attacks can only target the lowest numbered standee on the map.
Yep.
Right. This is why it was something that I was really annoyed that I forgot the last 2 weeks, because A, there wasn't a lot of mobs and I can do not a lot of attacking. B, it's also something that there's a chance that I completed by accident, but I wasn't willing to say I did. Even though I think looking at DPS meters on those last two scenarios, I only attacked like 3 or 4 times, right? Which is what makes it more annoying because I could have just not done those attacks or targeted, the standee with the lowest.
Because disclaimer-wise, you're playing the shards that is focusing not so much on attacks, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to be more supporty, right?
Yeah.
And let the DPS go to town. So it was really like this one particular was very, very tricky because both times that we set it up, the number one standee, right, was a Drake that was at the back of the room. So it was very much out of range for me. And looking at some of my cards, like I have a card that is a ranged attack.
And you start with brittle or something, right?
Well, yes, I can also start with brittle as a starting thing, and I gain a bonus to resources. So, but one of my cards is the stun one target. What's an attack, and if you spend resonance, I think it's called, you stun it, and if you spend 2 resonance, then you add an extra target. So you spend 3 and you can stun 2 targets. Pretty good, but it's an attack, so I couldn't do it right without booking my trial. So that made it very tricky. So I was like, okay, I've got a longer range attack. And so it was kind of these times where I was able to move in and do that. Fast forward to when we had 2 imps on relatively low life sitting in the main room while Deddy and Mark have kind of moved on to go fight the next room. Phil's kind of hiding back, trying to heal and rest. And I'm sitting there moving forward slowly going, okay. I'm like, I can't kill this. And Mike's like, just kill it. I'm like, I can't kill it. It's like, why? I'm like, I can't kill this thing.
It's all we heard. It just sounded so whingy. Like, oh, come on. Of course you can. So
but it was
like
that. Just kill it on the way out. And everyone was like having a go and then not killing it because it had 2 shields and it was leaving on 1 life. And I'm like, whatever. It's only on 1 life. I'll just leave it and go fight those other things. I'm like, I really, really need someone to kill this thing. So yeah, it was interesting. I had 1 card that is a move and then something adjacent to me takes 2 damage. So there was a situation where I could use that to hurt things, but I burnt that on my first cycle because I was like, I for some reason I looked at it and I think the top wasn't going to be all that particular helpful. So I was just like, oh, I can't even do that now, like to kill these stupid imps. So I basically just sat next to these imps getting smashed by them.
Yeah, and just whinging every round.
Asking for help.
They're just forest imps, guys. There's a reason we left them, because we believe that you can handle them.
Because you're lazy, that's why.
I don't want to go back.
Yeah, I don't want to go back 3 hexes. So yeah, anyway, that was my trial, and it made the first room really difficult. And then because we were setting up the next room, right, and we happened to kill number 1 flying Drake, spinning Drake, when the next one got put in, we had a spare standee, and there we go. It goes in at the back of the room. So I was like, well, I'm not killing these then. So it was very a really cool trial, but it was very frustrating on this scenario, particularly because there was so many mobs. And they were spread out so far. That's the other thing. If I think about the last one, we were in one room at the start where everything was there. I wouldn't have had a problem targeting stuff.
No.
Even the next one when we cleared, there was only like 4 mobs and they were right there. And then the last room we jumped over, so it didn't matter. So the last one, it would have been super easy to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did manage to get it done. And towards the end of it, there were multiple standees that had the same number. So I was able to do that. And it was good.
So is it fair to say that if you didn't have that trial, you would have contributed more damage, and that the scenario would have, I mean, we made it, spoiler alert, it would have been easier?
Yeah. Okay. There's definitely times it would have been easier because I had, like I said, on turn 1, I can do my stun too. So I could just stun those 2 drakes that were right in front of us. Like having between mine and Mark's like stuns plus your disarm, we can probably at least 1 or 2 targets in a cycle have kind of, CC'd or slow them down at least for, 3 or 4 turns. But I couldn't really use it.
No.
So
yeah, okay, it's good. It's good. I'm glad that we know it after the scenario, because there are definitely times where it's like, wow, you're really complaining a lot and not doing a lot of the damaging stuff and the stunning stuff because you can't obviously target these kind of things. It was very confusing. But I'm glad that it wasn't you and it was your trial. Because next week we should be able to play at +3 then, right?
Sure.
So the plan to open the doors, we we know that there's the locked doors we can't open without the pressure plates, so they're probably hiding behind a room. There's probably going to be one in the left room and one in the right room. So I'll just go open one up, and we'll get an idea of how big it is, because there were 8 standees or something in the first room, and it took us a while, especially at our difficulty. The side rooms will be tiny. They have to be. They'd have to be tiny with a pressure plate, etc. And we open the door, and there are heaps of drakes in there, and one forest imp to buff them and heal them and all that kind of stuff. And there are 2 pressure plates. 2, right? And there was a special rule that just said, do not set up the pressure plate B, which is one of the pressure plates in that room, for 2 characters. And that's when the penny kind of dropped. And it's like, oh, guys, I think there might be 2 in each room, which is really awkward because, yeah, trying to split us up. And with the size of this room and how many mobs are in here, it's likely that it's going to be mirrored closely in the other room. And that's kind of the bit where we just started clearing through that room and kiting things back because, it was going to be all dangerous and all, where I was kind of like, I don't know if we can do this. I don't know if our cards are going to allow us to do this. And also, it's an escape scenario, right? It's not a kill-all, which makes me think maybe we're not supposed to kill everything. We just go and stand on a pressure plate, get our asses handed to us, survive as long as we can, and then run to some kind of exit that's going to spawn a little bit later. And
yeah, well, I think that's it. We've done a couple recently where we did pressure plates. So without going into numbers of them, where we've had to stand on multiples, and we've managed to cheese them in a sense. Not cheese them, but we were able to not have to kill all the monsters on all of them. Like we did the big robot one where we just basically skipped that mechanic entirely. We did the prison one where we did kill most of the stuff up there, but we were able to, in a way, get everyone back down and do some stuff. So this was one where I'm like, there is no way in hell that we can split up into 4, 2 and 2 in each room and stand there, stand there for a turn and then come back out without just getting completely blown up. Because like I said, these things were hitting for 5 to 7 damage each time. There was a bunch of range stuff in there. It just was not going to happen. We would just insta-loss. So we definitely were we can have to kill this, or at least most of it.
We crunched the numbers. And the amount of times that we're going to get hit was going to be far greater than our health would sustain. So yeah, it just became a little bit of a kiting game. I just want to just note quickly, I did change my deck in the second run, because I was like, you know what, this is harder. I'm going to actually have to try hard a little bit and actually go through my deck and actually find cards that I think will be suitable for this. And more shields came in, and I was like, no, I'm definitely going to play a more tanking kind of role. With the adjacent curse thing that I have the infusion, and you were also shielding me. So there were a lot of times I was running around with maybe 3 or 4 shield, which was very, very helpful. It finally felt like I was tanking, and I haven't felt that yet. I've definitely taken a couple of hits here and there, but because of how scary these rooms were and the monster types were, it's not like the kelp and the blink blade are just going to charge in willy-nilly knowing that they're going to probably survive and there's really nothing for me to tank because their initiatives are lower and they'll win on the tiebreaker. It actually felt like, okay, everyone's going to be back and careful. I'll take the hits. I'm going to go in there and reduce them as much as I can. And it felt good. It really did feel good. Very rewarding. So I wanted to go in and commit. They were going to blow a bunch of stuff up. And we carted everything back into the thing. Mark, this is the part. Every single scenario, there's a part, and this is the part where Mark goes, "No, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna blink in, and I'm gonna go absolutely ham." And like he did. It's good that it still works. It's good that even at a high difficulty, he can still go in, go invis, pop 2 power potions, hit with advantage, and just blow up a room.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what happened, which made this so much easier. And then the plan was ultimately Gaz and I are going to sit on these pressure plates with the 2 DPS who can go invisible, can invis their way into the other room, which we assume is going to have the same kind of size and the 2 pressure plates, which will give us the opening for the last door that was locked.
Yeah. And I think with seeing the kelp do that in this scenario, 2 observations. 1, it's still as busted as it was when we were doing it on low difficulty. Like nothing changed. It's still deleted like 3 or 4 monsters, right? But 2, now instead of it feeling like it's both busted and kind of overtuned for the scenario, it felt required.
Yes.
Right? Like we don't complete that scenario if he doesn't do that.
Correct.
right? Oh, I mean, like maybe we still had a few cuts. So maybe on a toned down version of that turn, we maybe still do get through the mobs and we're a little bit weaker. But it definitely felt like that was a turning point from a almost for a little bit of a deep breath because there was still 3 or 4 there to deal with that were quite high. And then after his turn, they were pretty much all dead, and maybe there was one left alive. So then we could then kill that, move in, and they went and did their thing. So yeah, it definitely seemed like a required component of how we completed the scenario rather than well, he just did it instead of all of us.
Yeah. There was a world where a while back when he would do the wombo combo that he would do, that it would almost be seen a little bit, and I can quote it from me or say that this is the way it feels a little bit, is that when someone does that, you're potentially robbing the fun from everyone else, right? Because they're doing everything and you don't have to do anything. So in a way, you don't really have to contribute to that because it's done. Like you said, this was a requirement. So the minute he's doing that, instead of sitting there going, oh, here we go, standard, room clearing, fun killer buzz guy. It was more like, oh my God, go for it. Like the cheering, the arms up. It's like, come on, Mark, you got this. We need this reprieve, and it was such a different feeling. I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
just
well,
the way
I think that's another really good point is that we were able to get behind him doing that thing as a really cool thing that he was doing rather than, and not that we're against it, but it's more like that the room being deleted. And we felt this with the Blink Blade, and I'm sure there's been other times that we felt this with certain classes when they get really strong, is it doesn't really matter what cards I pick because I either need to go stupidly early to hit something that is irrelevant, or I need to pick movement cards to get into another room to do something before. So this was a cool situation of it was like, yes, okay, cool. Like I was hoping that he drew really well, right? Because it's like we need this. And that's a really cool feeling. But just to be clear again, before I get messages
still
from
busted.
Dwarf, absolutely still busted. Okay, and not just power pots. Let's move on.
Not just power pots. So the other guys run into the other room. They go invisible and they hit their things. And sure enough, in there's more draining drakes and spitting drakes and all
Although
that
room seemed easier.
It did a little bit. It
seemed more empty.
I think there were more spitting drakes in our room, that spawned, which I'd have to check. But yeah, it felt easier, definitely. Yeah. It probably feels easier because they were invisible and just ignored most of the things. In fact, due to the fact that they were invisible and all of that, a lot of the mobs then chose us as focuses and started pouring out into the hallway. And with their movement, it's kind of like, oh, we don't have that luxury, do we?
Well, I think the Drakes had a move 5. It was, and they drew it 2 turns in a row. So I think that was actually what happened because Mark opened the door, was invis, and then they moved out 5 or something like that. And I was like over the other side of the map, and as long as I go before them and they don't do their move 5, well, I'm fine. And they did it. They managed to do their really big move and hit me, and I'm like, I was so far away. I was like 2 or 3 rooms away, and this thing just legged it for me and just absolutely munched me. And I'm like, this is. I gotta get out of here.
It wasn't that bit. It was there was another bit where you made me discard a card for you, and it was like your sauce, your Gaz birds.
Oh yeah, I think that might have been a rest maybe, or I don't know, whatever it was. It was just actually that could have been it. I think I got hit really hard, and that's when it was, and then we realized that you could have used your pants.
Yep.
After the fact,
my pants were up at the time.
Yep. But that's another side point as well, is that I think we're trying to be also very strict on how we play because the difficulty is pumped up. So, just to paint the scenario really quickly for everybody, this thing hit me for a lot. I took the damage. I discarded a card, and then Daddy's like, before anyone else is gone, right? So very easy to retcon it back. Daddy's like, because he's got these pants that let him take a hit for someone next to him. It's like, I could use the pants. It would be fine to say, okay, that's fine, because it doesn't change anything, right? No. It wasn't that you did it because I got hit, because I didn't get crit. I think I just got hit. That it's the case of going like, but we were like, no, right? Like, again, keeping it really consistent on like not trying to kind of bend the rules slightly because it's harder, being like, no, we just have to be better.
Yes.
And I think that's something that I want to keep doing is 100%. You have to think about these things. If you've got triggers that you can do, if you've got items you can use, if you've got abilities, you need to do them. Yep. Unless not doing it breaks the game and you need to retcon it because that thing has to have happened.
Yes.
Right. For a game state thing, I think
like a targeting thing or something like that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I think stuff like that, I think we just need to be a lot cleaner on, so that I think it kind of keeps the difficulty wholesome, I guess, in a way.
It does. It makes the finish basically more rewarding, where you can sit there and go, you know what, we did that on, a hard mode, and even more so hard mode when it's very easy to make little tweaks here and there to make it easier.
And I think we've spoken about this slightly, is that we did that for a really long time, and we've been talking about how we're a stickler for kind of the rules, even though we get them all wrong, but we're a stickler for what we think they are, right? And then we correct them when we get them wrong. I feel like there's a place where maybe in the last 4 to 8 weeks, when things have been a bit like kind of steamrolly, that we've just gone a bit loose with that, because you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, it's like me taking 5 damage or you taking the 5 damage when everything's about to die anyway or about to win is like, whatever. Yeah, just use your abilities because. And so those tiny little trigger windows where technically you missed it, but it doesn't really have an impact. You're like, yeah, fine. Right.
Yep. But that scenario impacted it. Like those steamrolly ones, it wouldn't impact the end result. Whereas this happening and me not using the actual legs, you probably had 1 card left in your hand, which is why you chose the negator, and that's where it went. So if we retconned it, all of a sudden you have that card left. This can impact whether or not we actually finish the scenario.
Well, it would have, because in 2 turns I would have used that, which gives everyone basically move 5, which when we're all trying to get to the exit is huge.
So it was a costly mistake, but we owned it. And we were just like, no, let's see, how we go. And it just put more importance on making sure that we're switched on enough to make sure we're doing this properly.
Yeah. So anyway, cool. There's just a really interesting side note around tightening things up a bit and how I think this encourages us to do that.
Yes. So the other 2 pressure plates are done. All 4 pressure plates are being stood on. The doors open up. We got the last room, which is a nice small room with all the escape hexes. We got 3 polar bears and a treasure chest. Okay. And immediately the polar bears start, bottlenecking that doorway, and Phil runs into our room and we're like, well, we're not going this way. We're meant to be going that way. It was really confusing. Mark teleports from the far right-hand room, which we didn't clear anything, by the way, into the last room. And Gaz now teleports because he's now got the most MVP item in the game that seems to have just some amazing play weekly where he can then teleport. Yep, teleport straight to the last room.
This has been the best useless random item I've ever had. Like, it's just, I don't want to replace it's a chess piece. I don't want to replace it. For those that aren't aware, it's a cloak that you can teleport up to 20 spaces as long as you end next to another player, another character. So, I mean, especially in escape scenarios, but there's also just been other times, like in the robot one, I used it to great. That wasn't an escape, but that was a case of I could go push a button and then teleport over. So again, just came in clutch.
Yep. So, and the 2 of them are in that last room. I still wasn't feeling confident. Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is, going to be horrendously bad. But one misplay, and that's the scary thing. One misplay, you don't think about the positioning of where you're at versus how many things are in the next room that have a move 5 or a move 6 and can catch up with you. I had to still get to that last room with you guys there. Now that you're not around to give me the birds thing, I had to now make sure that I could get there myself. And you got polar bears in the doorway who can immobilize. I still had cards, like item cards that can remove conditions, which was really lucky that I still had them. So it was more that conversation about, here's the bad thing, here's my response to if bad thing happens, a contingency plan, and just making sure that we had the tools needed to get out.
Yeah.
So we got to the last room. Everyone started blinking into the last room, jumping over stuff, and so everyone started to one by one escape, with the exception of Mark, who I think mistimed his initiative. And there was a tiny butt clenching moment where I think the polar bears or the raining drakes, one of the 2, came up and started hitting him multiple times, and he was losing cards to do that, to then have none left. As his last turn, he went onto the escape, and that. Oh my God, when he was explaining that he's going to have to lose cards, he's only got 2 left and none anywhere else, that was kind of like, you're kidding me.
Yep.
You cannot throw in the last round just because you decided to hang around. But to be fair, he was hanging around for me because he was like, we are not leaving until Deddy is in here.
Well, yeah, that's the really tricky thing, right? Because he was doing the right thing, but because I stayed as well, but I stayed down a bit lower. But that's the hard thing. It's like staying there to make sure we can help in case something went wrong.
Yes.
And then you're like, cool, I've made it. And he's like, oh, I'm getting punched in the head. And it's like, oh no, like now maybe I should have stayed to make sure you can get back. Like, so it was, yes, very, very close, a lot closer than it needed to be. But yeah, it was kind of, again, made it a good feeling to get through.
Yes. So we finished. We all escaped our first +2 difficulty. Yay. And we received an item, which is the cracked idol, which is the one that we were holding. Oh, by the way, Phil was holding that the whole time, and he never passed it off to anyone. No one asked for it. It was great on him. He has advantage in all his attacks. And Phil, you have advantage. Don't forget, draw a second card.
Yeah.
Because you kept forgetting.
Yeah, it was a weird kind of item buff because you don't attack heaps. I wasn't attacking very much. Mark basically has advantage all the time anyway, whenever he's invisible. So it really only had one target, which meant that, which is good, because we could do it. But I feel like there's a world with a different party makeup where you are kind of staggering your initiative so that you can passing it off to people.
It's part of probably the strategy, right? It's encouraged.
Yeah. Two melee DPS that are going to work hand in hand. You just make sure that the one with the idol goes first, and at the end of the turn they pass it off, and then they can pass it back. So they're always going to have this idol, and everyone gets advantage, which maybe is kind of factored into the difficulty of the scenario. Like, if you're going to have a lot of advantage, then you probably hit a bit harder. So yeah, it's a cool little bonus. We just didn't really need to play around with it.
Yeah. So an interesting question I have for you now, which is the same question I ask you every week. How did you feel about this scenario?
Like, this is a really hard one to answer. I think I mentioned it too. I had a lot of fun with this one, and more fun than I've had with Frosthaven in, recent weeks. Like, I loved the Prison Break scenarios from a design perspective, from a lore perspective, and we've talked at length about that. But I think because we steamrolled through them so much that from a play experience perspective, it probably wasn't as good as some other scenarios have been, right? And it just left something on the table. This is almost the opposite. I go, well, the experience of playing this was great. Like, I had so much fun. It was so tense. It was very close. We had important decisions to make. The scenario itself is probably pretty, and I'll use vanilla, which I do all the time, meaning it's good, right? But there wasn't anything really special. I mean, standing on the pressure plates is interesting with escape, but like, it's not doing something we hadn't done before. I mean, the Drakes did mix it up, so that is one thing that does make it a bit more memorable. But it was really, I think, the difficulty of the situation that made it more tense, which made it more enjoyable.
Yes.
Because I think if we had run this on our normal difficulty, which is what, +0, this definitely wouldn't make my top 10. I don't think it'd make my top 10 now, but it definitely would be nowhere near. It wouldn't be in my bottom 10 because it wasn't a bad scenario. It would just be super forgettable, right? You'd be like, remember that time that we had to stand on the pressure plates? I'm like, nah, which one? And you'd only remember we had to fight the Drakes. I'm like, oh yeah, vaguely. The one that Phil kept forgetting at advantage, right?
Yeah.
That would be it. That would be the memory of that, right? Or maybe the trials come into play. So it's fascinating. Where I don't think this scenario is amazing.
No,
but I think we made it amazing.
Yeah,
I bumped the difficulty up, and I'm really curious if we maybe need to restart our campaign.
100%. I mean, think back to some of those scenarios that would be like, yeah, meh, whatever. They could be mind-blowingly amazing. Because like you said, it's the monster variety of in there. It's a great choice of monsters. That's where a lot of the tension comes from. And then you add the difficulty to that. That's kind of what made this so enjoyable. And it's weird. It's the same game. It's the same game we've been playing, the same classes we've been playing, and a very kind of ordinary, like you said, vanilla scenario, like objective. But that one decision to increase the difficulty has just made that so much more memorable. And once we finished and we sat around the table, we're like, holy crap, that was fun. And Mark was just like, even halfway through, Mark said, I'm enjoying this a lot more than I, have in the last couple of weeks. Like, we're all enjoying the game. It's something that we've put a lot of time into, but this was like, it was a weird thing where we all came together and was like, wow, this is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. If only, like, I just wish someone had suggested this earlier.
I know that Dwarf sometimes suggests to people who are finding the game difficult to lower the difficulty. I agree with you. I wish he had mentioned that we should probably increase it, and it might be time for an increase.
And we should probably speak to, again, just really quickly as to why we haven't, is that we just have found we don't have a lot of chance to replay stuff. So if we bump it up, we've done some hard ones before that I feel like if it was that much harder, we wouldn't have had a chance to. But yeah, we just kind of took the plunge and I think it's worked. So I guess it's now something we need to work out moving forward. Is that where we sit?
Yeah. And I think right now, just on the topic of difficulty very quickly, what it does is that I think you can technically do this at any difficulty. What this has taught me is that it's just more down obviously to how you're playing and how well you know your class, how well you can coordinate your rounds with your mates, and look after the board. And the rest of it is just numbers and RNG, obviously from the ability deck. Which, by the way, your ability to look at that top card is even more clutch now, because it allows us to have a full round of planning of how we're going to deal with a certain enemy because we can see what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what we talked about offline a bit and in between sessions was that, you know, with, say, the Astral and your disarms or your brittles, you know, my ability to look at kind of the, or even your muddles, right? The muddles that you throw out from your attacks, my ability to look at the cards or some of those things, they don't seem impactful when the thing's going to die anyway, right?
Yep.
Like it doesn't matter what the Drakes are doing because they're going to die. It doesn't matter that they're disarmed because all you're doing is saving one attack of 4, which makes no difference because the person's probably not going to get attacked by anything else. So it's more like, oh, I can do these cool things, but I'm just doing them because that's what my cards say and I should be doing that. Whereas it felt, again, like all of those abilities were required.
Yes.
Right? So having a look at the next monster ability was like, A, what are they doing? But B, when are they going? Right? And that was probably the most important thing. Is like, okay, well, we've got to go before them doing that thing because we want to kill them, or we want to stun them or something like that. So yeah, it is really interesting how much it skews that.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to be able to craft a deck, and I think this is going to lead further into the importance of deck building and making sure that we're not getting complacent, because I think that's something that we fall into the habit of. It's just going in, take a few hits, etc. Now we have to really, focus a lot more on what we're doing.
That's it. And I think to that point, right, it means now Phil and Mark playing those like kind of really heavy DPS characters like that we've sort of talked about, they are going to need to probably optimize a bit more. And I'm not talking about items and making sure that they have all the right stuff, but they need to play their turns right. And the reward for that is that they're going to be able to clear this harder content, and they're kind of a tool in that process.
Big time.
It's going to be more rewarding because it's not who can race to see who can kill everything the fastest. It's like, how do I plan my turn so that, you know, we get through this speed hump? Because now those high health, high damage monsters are actually seeming like a roadblock or a hurdle to get past rather than just a speed hump, you know?
What'll be interesting is whether or not the bump up in difficulty will put some of those bin monsters on slightly higher alert, and whether or not they become more dangerous. And
well, I was going to say that because the polar bears have 24 health on our difficulty. But that's just ridiculous. Now, I don't think we bin them, but like they definitely are mid, if that. I know some of the ones, like you said, like Earth Demons, like they're going to have a lot of health as well. I think like the Steel Automatons or whatever they're called, like they had the same, like 24, 25 health and what, 2 or 3 shields?
Yeah, something.
That's basically for our party at the moment, they're invulnerable. Like you may as well just put a dash next to their hit points. So this thing's going to run around and just do whatever it wants for the length of the time it's on the board.
And we will just quoting here first. You did just call Phil and Mark tools. That's okay. I will cut that out and save it for future.
Excellent. Good.
Very quickly, because we are running out of time. Trial talk. So Phil did not complete his trial. He gave up after because we gave him an option to opt out once he had taken enough damage and just said, okay, do you want to try again next week? What are your thoughts on that? Because his trial in particular, this is one where you have to track yourself because people aren't expected to know. You're not meant to share these things. That's the one thing I find a little odd. I love the trial system. I find it a little bit awkward when you have one that requires kind of everyone to help you in a way, keep track of what it is. Otherwise, yeah, it just seems weird.
Yeah, that one there I really like, but it does kind of go a little bit against, like, because I think this one works better when everybody knows what you can and can't say, because it makes it a kind of a group thing to help that person not achieve it, but I mean, because we're not helping him get it. We're just making sure we're helping him police it.
Yes.
Which is important in that one, because otherwise you don't know. Like, you go through and go, I'm pretty sure I'm fine. As you said, it's really easy to say these words and not even know that you did.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like more of them. It kind of gives me party game vibes that you can't really take too seriously because it's not built into the game. It's got nothing to do with the game. It's literally a person. There's nothing card related. There's no negative there. It's just things you can't say.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that it's in there. But yeah, it's harder because if I'm looking at a card and just going, okay, cool, people don't get to enjoy it anywhere near as much as we now do.
That's exactly it. We wouldn't have got to enjoy this process of him doing the trial without knowing about it. And I think we are enjoying that. Whereas I don't know how much you guys would have enjoyed my trial more if you'd known what it was, right? You would have if you'd known it, you would have been like, oh, okay, well, that's just a limitation he's got. Whereas me not telling you and just literally going, can you kill this thing? Because I can't. You're like, no, just do it. I was like, I can't, right? Yeah. Then you, like, again, it could be a battle goal. It could be part of the trial. It could be the whole trial. You don't know why I can't kill that one, right? Yeah. So there's mystery around it. And I'm not telling you it's because of my trial. I'm just like, I can't do it. Then you guys need to play around with that. So that's kind of fun. But if you knew why, then it's almost solved.
Yeah.
So
good system, Alexander. So doing really well. Looking forward to getting through more. I'm looking forward to completing mine at some stage. I'm sure a lot of people know what it is, and if you've been keeping track, you'll understand why I have not been able to do it.
My only guess is, like, watch everyone else complete the rest of the deck and then you complete yours, right? Like,
could be. Mark's quick thoughts about scenario 133. Bolt. Bumping the difficulty made it feel like the game I remembered. So much more engaging. The scenario itself was a great continuation of the first, with a funny story to bridge the two. The idol being helpful this time was a nice twist, and it had good impact. Monsters were brutal, mechanics were tricky. In terms of mechanical design, I feel like this ticked a lot of boxes, and for a two-parter, its story was fairly engaging. 2 claws up. P.S. I'm not very good at the game, and I wish Daddy could share some of his wisdom with me so I can stop being a noob. Praise Daddy. Oh, thanks, Mark. So, and Phil wrote, nothing crazy, but fun. I liked the harder level. Fair to say Ormy's dead?
100%. I don't even think the difficulty plays into this. There's just too many monsters in that
Ormy
first
doesn't
room.
Scale. I don't think he scales. So
no, well, yeah, that's exactly it. So that's even on lower difficulty, he's still getting complete. If a Drake gets next to him, he's dead.
Yeah,
like, 100% just absolutely dead.
Yeah. Community-wise, I saw one post on Facebook last year in July, and the person said Frosthaven scenario 133 can go die. So they had a bad time. I will post DPS on the board. We won't go through that. Outpost phase, we had the event for the Vermlings again. And this time they saw us coming back and they were just like, hey, food. And we lost all of our food. Mm-hmm. And then we met up with Mayor Souther and we met up with Captain Olmsted, and they were just like, hey, we need to deal with this. How do we deal with this? And apparently there was 2 different approaches. One of them is run out there headstrong, which obviously sounds like the right thing to do. They're Vermlings, so what's going to happen, right? It's like the Skaven, right? And then you've got one where you catch a boat out and it goes all sneaky beaky in a little canoe somewhere, and you find their camp and we assassinate them ultimately. And I mean, that's pretty much what we did. And I don't remember what we got from it. Was it morale or inspiration? Because they seem to be the 2 things that give us stuff. I don't think we had any other event that went in.
No, not sure.
Oh, we had the attack.
Huh? Well, that was the attack. We did the attack, and then we didn't do an event. Yeah. Just on that though, I really liked how that one played out. I don't know how much we want to go into detail of it, but from the way they changed an attack to how this one worked, because we were building a strike force. So, spoilers, if you're still listening, you don't care anyway. You go through your town deck. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah,
town guard deck. Yeah, and it was like pick out 6 cards, and then add in the success and add in the wreck card. So you're going in with this really, like, kind of obviously tuned deck where you get to pick everything, and then you were trying to beat this defense of 75. which is really high. And then there was obviously, I think there was negatives. Just like if you lost 2 of the 3, then you were going to wreck 4 buildings or something like that. The numbers there might
Yeah, it was
not
like
be
a
correct.
random amount of buildings that you had to draw
was-
from the deck.
Yeah, but it was so it wasn't individually like here, this is the building under attack, just go this thing, do you. So I think the way they did this was a really cool twist, and it actually made it like a mini puzzle, because we were looking at it going, what would you do? We've got like 350s in there, which was pretty good, but the other 3 cards, well, a 10 and a 20 wasn't going to get it done. So it was this case of needing to put rolling ones in there so they could roll into. Yeah, it's just, I thought it was really cool. Like there was
Very
a little
cool.
bit of planning, and it was a different way of doing it. So yeah, I'd love if more of the attacks had some difference.
Yeah. I like that they can add a layer of special rules to a core part of the game, and normally the core part of the game is actual scenarios, but this is they've taken something in the game and gone, yeah, you're getting attacked, but here's a bunch of modifiers and special rules that you tweak it to make it thematically work and viable as well. So no, I agree with you. I love it. Now, because we went in twice, all right, we had our first run. We managed to capture a drake, a rending drake in the first run. And then I think we started asking, because there was another group we know that had the similar problem with us, and we were asking for them because they were confused as to whether or not you can retry a scenario because you failed, and do you keep the pet you got? And it seemed to be a yes, which meant on attempt number 2, we caught a spitting drake. So we got 2 pets from
Yay.
one scenario, which is pretty cool. And they seem to be the last 2 pets we need. So I spun my wheel at work. We were meant to do that at the end of the session, but I totally forgot. So I introduce the newest pets to the amDirt Frosthaven stable. We have our spitting drake, Danguga, or just Dang. So congratulations, Dang. You are now our spitting drake. The spitting drake ability was all characters will add poison to all their ranged attacks for the round, which is fairly cool, especially if you've got, like, I can already see the media doing something like that, which is pretty cool on the, God, I've already forgotten the card, and I built my whole thing
Orbs?
around a lot of it. Magma
Something
orbs, that's
orbs?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just off the top of my head. And yeah, it's very cool. Then you've got the Rending Drake, which we spun the wheel again, and we got Kaliga. So Kaliga, congratulations, you are the amDirt Rending Drake. And I'll get Gaz to write them in his pretty handwriting on those cards. Now, the Rending Drake is all similar to the Spitting Drake, but it's poison instead. It's wound instead. So all characters will add wound to all of their melee attacks this round. What are your thoughts on those 2 pets?
I think they're really cool. And they're definitely hard to catch because there's not many. They're like super rare Pokemon. Something I just realized when you read them out, though, is that the Spitting Drake is only ranged attacks and the Rending Drake is only melee attacks. I didn't read that the first time. I thought it was just poison to all attacks and wound to all attacks. So I love that it's not just because I think poison to all attacks is pretty good. Poison to all range attacks is definitely a lot more niche. So you might have to call out, hey, range attacks this turn, and then the people with no range attacks are going to be like, what's that?
Yeah, I actually don't have any, so...
Yes, you do.
No, the sword one is still a melee attack.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so you, Mark, and I mean, Phil, I know, has ranged attacks. I don't know whether he
I've never
takes
seen
any
him
of
do
them.
one. No,
Yeah,
he
cool,
never
cool.
does. So it's for you,
all
really.
Just me. Yeah. So I should just say, Gaz, add
Gaz
poison
and
to all your
Dang.
range attack. Yeah.
That's right. Finally, we've got our little quiz. So funnily enough, adding on to the email I got, I think last week, I think we're talking about the dirtbag, M. Cooper, who spoke to us and has joined our Discord, gave me a quiz idea for you. And the quiz idea was basically to name, or this is for you to do, you have to name either the monster or character based on the name of an ability card, right? So, for example, if I was to say Crushing Weight, you say...
Drifter. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Or you name the monster based on the monster ability card. Okay.
Yep.
Now that can be quite difficult. So I've definitely tuned it in such a way that it should be helpful. It's not going to be like what are they called? Nothing special.
Nothing special.
Correct. It's not going to be nothing special. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, just says he said it could be a lot of silly fun. So let's go through it. I have picked 21 There are 10 monsters and there are 11 class abilities.
Oh, okay. You picked class abilities too. Yeah, cool. All right, let's go.
So we're going to go with the monsters first. Okay? All I'm going to say is the title, and you just kind of have to use that information to work it out. Okay? So number 1, we have Aid from Below.
The burrowing blades?
No, but the word aid may have helped. So I'm just going to let you know what this one is now. This is the Lurker Wave Thrower.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I was thinking supporty and I didn't think that the burrowing blades had it, but at the below part, I was like, yeah, cool. Makes sense. Yep,
Yeah.
let's go.
90 initiative. Yeah, okay. Shift form.
Oh, I always get this wrong in regards to what they're called. Ice wraiths.
That's it.
I always mix them up with Frosthaven, like the frost part, ice and frost. So yeah. All right, cool.
All right, nice. 1 for 2. Number 3, Beam of Annihilation.
Beam of Annihilation.
Yeah. Beam of Annihilation.
What shoots beams? Is it the
I really
bolt
want to
shooters?
No. Deep Terror.
Oh, of course. Yeah, okay. Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah. I really wanted to do a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire segment with this, where I give you 4 multiple choice questions and you can call a friend and do 50-50 and stuff like that. I think that would be really fun.
Cool.
I know. It just needs a bit of setup. Number 4, Birds of Prey.
Shriek Fiends?
Yes.
Yeah. I like how you just given me these really easy ones in between the hard ones.
What do you mean? I think Beam of Annihilation was pretty easy.
Oh, I suppose. I forgot about the deep terrors.
Immovable Object.
The steel automatons?
Yes. Well done. Grenade.
Grenade? It's either a robot or a it is a robot. He's nodding his head. Is it a ruined machine?
No, Ancient Artillery.
Oh, okay. Yep, that makes sense.
If they don't make sense, let me know, because then we can talk about how badly the designer between that enemy and their card naming abilities is. Now, Frost Breath.
Okay. The Yetis?
Yes, Frozen Corpse.
Okay. Yep.
Shocking Voltage.
What does zappy stuff? Again, it's gonna be a robot. I'm thinking like Real Machine or what's the other robot? The spinning Beyblade things, but they're fire. So I'm gonna say Real Machine.
No, Lightning Eel.
Oh, I completely forgot. I was like, there's no lightning monsters. There are. They have lightning in their name. Yep. Okay.
Power Shot.
That's the archers. Yeah, Algox archers.
That's right. And the last one for the monsters, Tunneling Slices.
Oh, so is this going to be burrowing blades or is it going to be spinning Beyblades? What's it called again?
Tunneling Slices.
Oh, okay. That's the burrowing blades.
Yes, nice. If you went with spinning Beyblades, I would have been slightly disappointed. All right, let's move on to our character ability cards. Now, just as a heads up, there's only 11. Now there's 17 classes in the game. None of them are doubling up. All right?
No worries.
First one is Hunter Killer.
Prism?
Correct.
That's
your Jackal Mag.
Jackal, yeah.
See, part of me was like, people always have a nickname for certain cards, right? Jackal Mech and all that kind of stuff. But the actual card name is maybe the confusing part that people don't necessarily read. They memorize the whole card except for the name. So that'd be interesting. Flailing Tendrils.
Flailing Tendrils. I know, is it Coral?
No, this one was Gemini's.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah.
Blood in the water.
That's coral.
Nice. We've got sand in the hourglass.
Is that Bling Blade?
That is. Putrid cloud.
Bone Shaper?
Mm-hmm. Sustained momentum.
Is that Banner Spear?
No, that is Drifter.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Is that boots? Is that the shoes?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That is the shoes. Reprisal.
Oh, that, like, I know that. Like, I know the name of that card. Is that Banner Spear?
No.
Is that,
You've already got it wrong, but you can keep guessing.
yeah, that's not coral. You wouldn't have doubled up.
No.
No, I don't know.
Shackles.
Oh, okay.
Meat grinder.
Meat grinder.
Meat grinder.
Drill?
No, good guess though. I didn't consider that. This is Banner Spear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of your formations.
Which one?
One person, yeah, you are at the top, and then you've got two adjacent, and then one opposite of your ally.
Yeah, and it does wound?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Path of Pain.
Well, I would say this would be Shackles, but I assume you're not doubling up. Trap?
Yeah, nice. Well done. Second last one, we have Stormwall.
Snowflake?
Yes, that's the schlong.
Okay.
And finally, Transparency.
Kelp?
No.
No. This is shards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, picking a shards one was hard because like vibration, sound, vibration.
Is that the one that is bottom invis?
No. That is the attack at range 4. Reveal the top card of the target's monster ability deck. And if you eat a resonance, you can add +1 damage and pierce.
Yep, okay, cool.
What are your thoughts on like that as a whole? But also just seeing how much theme and flavor is tied into just a simple thing as a title for an ability and being able to keep all of it relatively consistent, especially when it comes to, you know how they come up with a title for an ability and it somewhat works with both the top and the bottom ability? And it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's really, really cool.
The naming of the cards for the character abilities is, I think, one of the most underrated parts of the design and flavor of the game, because I feel like in most of the cases outside very select cards, you don't know the names of them.
No.
Right. And when I read some of them and you actually look at the cards, they hit and land on flavor way more often than they don't. So I think it's a really, it's almost like a thankless job because they would have taken time to go through them. And I feel like in a lot of cases, they just look at that and look at the abilities because nobody cares about the writing. They just care about the ability. Pretty much.
It's a skip, cutscene, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So no, I think they've done a bang up job. And I think the same was in Gloomhaven as well. Like they're really, really good job of theming and naming.
Yeah. Okay. I look forward to that. If you have any more ideas that you would like me to test, Gaz, and just see, I mean, he did better in this than he has in a lot in the past. So very well done. We'll see what other little fun games I can play with you on the episode. But that is all we do have time for this week. Join us next week as we hit up scenario something, as we haven't worked out what's next. In the meantime, I've been your host, Eddie. I've been joined again by Gaz.
And remember, when it comes to rolling terribly, it's all in bumping up the difficulty.